Hi again, everybody. I'm Jamie Allison. This is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers. We talk to people from different genres, different niches, just people doing really cool things in their space. Some days we talk to athletes like we will today, but we've also talked to CEOs and entrepreneurs and just people doing really cool things that we can learn a little bit about their journey and hopefully take some of those and maybe apply them in our own lives as well. So I know that we're going to have a really cool conversation today. Just before we jump into that, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that we are supported by Epitome Sportswear, which is a really good alignment for us for a number of reasons. One being that it's not just kind of high performance, it's how do you have kind of that whole life success, and they kind of follow that kind of premise in both their clothing, and also the other great alignment with us is that they have a belief in giving back to the communities they serve, and they are working to impact the inequities in opportunity for girls and women in sport. And so for that reason, a portion of their profits go directly to organizations and initiatives that support girls in sport. So really cool initiative there. You can take a look through our Instagram bio, and inside there you'll be able to click through, and there's a 20% discount code, so definitely use that if you're going to use it. Or you can go directly, and that's to epitomesportswear.com. That's EPITOME sportswear.com. And so today, really happy to be able to have Kris Rugloski here today. Kris is an elite obstacle course racer, completed over 40 of them, I think, with 30 plus podium finishes. So she's done really well very quickly in that. She's competed in 900-mile ultras, has run, actually has really jumped up in the scene in HYROX recently as well. So has done some stuff there. She has been a competitor on the Titan Games on NBC and has a strong showing recently. If you're following Spartan Games too, and you'll be able to see that right now and how she's done there. So lots of things, varied stuff, I guess, that you've been doing, Kris. So first of all, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it, because I know you've been quite busy recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Well, I think maybe the first thing is that you've had a lot of race success in a pretty short period of time. In the last couple of years, you've done a whole lot of different things and against some really big names in those sports. And I guess, first of all, how's that been that, you've being able to move so quickly in some of those sports, but also to be running against or racing against some of the biggest names in the sports and beating them from time to time too. So how's that been, for you?
Well, I'm pretty new to sports in general. I came into it, I guess, end of 2017 was kind of my first introduction. I didn't do anything in high school, college, anything.
Yeah.
And I think, I would say a big part of it is having a good support system. I pretty quickly got involved with my local gym there in Houston, Texas area, called Grit Fitness. And they had just, so much, they had exactly what I needed to train for what I was trying to do. And then also just the support system, just people supporting me and, just kind of in my corner, encouraging me towards all that. I think the other thing I would probably say is just being new to all of it and just being totally in, sold out. I feel like a lot of people come to this as kind of a second sport and come into it, having some kind of high school, college, pro background. And then they're like, oh, this is, kind of the next thing. But I came into it as this is first time I've tried anything. And I was just super excited about, excited to be a part of it. So yeah, that. And then I think another big part of it is also not pushing it too far. A big focus on recovery and mobility and just maintaining my body, period. I think it's a little easier. I'm on the younger side. But even for me, that's always a big focus is taking care of both physically and mentally, just making sure I'm, in a good place as often as much as I can be.
Yeah. And I do find, people may not know kind of that journey, because a lot of people, you're right, are used to when they see some of these athletes, they've been, either longtime competitors in that sport, or you're right, you know, it's a shift from another sport, or, you know, maybe they've been, you know, there's some people we talked to maybe been swimming at college and then decided, okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different later. For you, that journey was a little bit different, and you know, to go from, and maybe you could talk about that a little bit. It's just, how did you go from kind of not doing any sports at all, and why, and then maybe just kind of, you know, why the sudden thing, okay, this is something I want to, and that's, it's probably pretty all consuming now compared to kind of before. So, you know, just talk a little bit about that, because that would seem different to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with a bit of a different background. I guess I was just very sheltered, and that was just not something my parents were interested in, is like doing sports. So, and I didn't really care. I didn't know to care, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was really what it was, is when I kind of heard about these, you know, some of my friends were doing them, and I ran my first one, I guess, end of 2016. And I was like, this is really fun. Like, people say this is hard and challenging, but like, I just had fun with this. Yeah. And then, you know, the following year kind of found the competitive side of it and realized like, it lends naturally to just kind of my natural, you know, set of, you know, I guess, talents, gifts, genes. And just find that there's a competitive side. And like, I think I've always been competitive, just never was competitive like athletically, because I just didn't have that. So being able to, you know, kind of finding it, it wasn't very hard. It didn't take very long for me to be like all in, like, this is it. And then it's just, I really enjoy, like, there's so much variety in this kind of sphere that I found myself in. Like, there's the long ultra stuff, there's the shorter, intense, like strength-based stuff. It's kind of like a little bit of everything. And for me, like, I kind of feel like I come into it with a little bit of a deficit of having never done any of this kind of stuff. And it's just like, I just love it. I'm soaking up all of it. I just want to do all of it as much as I can all the time.
Well, and that is one thing that a lot of people probably don't do, the variety that you do. Like, that's, I mean, you know, to go from some events that are very kind of heavy lifting events, that you've done some of those recently, and then also, you know, to do a 100-mile on the other side of that. Like, how do you train differently for that, or do you train differently? Because, you know, obviously, if you're going from one event to another, you don't necessarily have huge runways to each of those to completely change your training. You know, how do you train yourself to make sure that you can do both of those types of events?
I just try to train like well balanced, and my approach is kind of like, I want to be able to do whatever it is that I decide to do. I got into it all. I mean, especially the ultras, when I first heard about that, I was like, that's insane. That's crazy. Yeah. But then I kind of had the thought, like, if people are doing that, like, I want to be able to do that. So from there, I've kind of turned into like, I feel like everybody is far more capable of so much more than they ever like ask of themselves. And so I just want I want my body to be like physically fit and able to kind of do whatever I ask of it. And so, you know, so I do a lot of like basic aerobic training. I always involve some strength aspect. And then I think a lot of it, you know, kind of comes down to the mentality of like, I can do anything and I will do anything. And if I decide to do something, my body can and will follow through. So it's a lot of, I think I definitely put myself in a position to be able to succeed and be able to do well. But a lot of it too is just kind of like mentally, like, it's happening. And so it's gonna, you know.
So how do you, I mean, those ultras are a good example, because I think anybody we've talked to that has that type of background, you do regardless hit some point where you have to kind of keep your head in it and be able to get your body to do those things. Have you found that, you know, the first couple of times, was it more difficult, or is it something that you know how to, like, have you learned how to do that, or is it something that it's just been in me the whole time?
I think some of it is kind of in you the whole time, but it's definitely learnable. And I have seen a huge progress for me. The first couple ones I did, I've read somewhere like, everybody's hard is different, and you have to define your hard, and then you push your hard. You are always pushing that boundary of hard. So I think that's what, like, finding what's hard for me, doing it. And then once you've done, like, to me, 100 miles was, you know, almost like, I couldn't, you know, imagine what that feels like. But once you've done it, even though like physically it hurt, and like physically, like, I was destroyed, as soon as I finished, I'm like, I'm never doing that again. Like, that was it. there's a huge mental win every time you push that boundary of what's hard and what's difficult. And that mentality just kind of levels up a little bit, where it's like, that was really hard and I did it. So what else is there that's really hard that I can do?
Right.
So
just
yeah,
the fact that you were able to complete it means that you've
yeah.
ticked a box that it's not unfathomable anymore.
And then, so now in the ones that I've done since then, there's going into it, I know I can do it. So I'm past that point of like, can I even do this? Then it's a matter of like, can I do it faster? Can I do it better? Or, you know, I tend to bonk. I always bonk at like 1 to 2 a.m. is where I'm just like done. And so I've had to like, okay, well, what can I do to prevent that? Or what can I do to, you know, make that? And I've, you know, just different, several different things. I mean, definitely making sure like food and water is right. But also just telling myself like, you've done this before. This is, you enjoy this on some level. Like I wouldn't come back to it if I didn't find some kind of satisfaction in it. And then just soaking, like, I think it takes a little bit of like just living in the moment that you're in, like not thinking about, okay, I've already run 80 miles. I still have 20 to go. Like I'm out here running. Yeah, I've gotten to run in some beautiful places, gotten to see some really cool things, and to just kind of like take a second to breathe and like, this is amazing. Like everything hurt, you know, and you just, you know, don't think about that, but just take a second to kind of almost center and like, this is it. Like, and I found that kind of like just taking a breath and like just soaking in where you are in that moment, because everything is compounded, like all the pain, all the like, it's all compounded. So you're always thinking like, well, I did all of this and like just hurts, or I have so much to do. But if you just take a second, like most of the time, unless you're like actually bleeding out, like most of the time you're kind of okay. And so it's just kind of taking that moment to kind of center and like, it's all good.
It is interesting how everyone has a slightly different kind of way of dealing with that, but all very similar. And it almost I'm trying to think if it was either Mike Wardian or Ryan Atkins who said that it was they actually have a repetition they start to do in their head that kind of takes them outside of their body for a little bit when it's having that time, and then it kind of brings them back to just little bits and pieces and looking around and realizing. And some people it's also where you are, it's being in the moment also is kind of getting out of that and realizing, wow, look at the amazing scenery of wherever I'm racing, because a lot of the times it's pretty fantastic. So you know, now Kris, the other thing that people probably, you know, listening would have recently seen you on Spartan Games too. And maybe that's one thing that I can find out a little bit about, because you know, there was again a pretty eclectic group of competitors there, and even some of the things they were doing was a little bit different. You know, what was that experience like for you? You know, and being relatively new and being parachuted into that, where you have like some pretty, you know, it's pretty cool that you're going to be competing with, you know, Corinna and Lindsay and, you know, Lauren and all those people. What was that experience like, and what did you find, you know, what did you pull out of the experience by the time it was done? And now I guess you could talk a little bit about it because it's out there now. So, but yeah, what was it like?
I thought it was really neat. It was one of my, I guess I love the multi-day competition, something new every day. There's always something, there's always something to look forward to. And there's always something you're kind of like recovering from. I liked the variety of events. The variety of events and just the different like extremes of some of these different things were like, I mean, I mountain biked twice before going into that. And then it was like, this is like the real, I mean, I loved the mountain biking, the running. I felt like all of it helps when it's in a beautiful place. And so much of it was just like, you know, things I'd never done before, or things I didn't have much experience in, but it was like, well, this is what's it, and this is what's going on. I loved it. I was like, I wish we could have done it for another couple of weeks. I think it was the way it was a run was a little frustrating, so there was a little bit of that. But I think I just kind of had to focus on like, we're in a beautiful place, we're doing really fun things, and it was really neat to kind of go against, like you said, some of these people that are professionals in some of these things. I mean, Lindsay is a professional, or has been a pro mountain biker, and it was really neat to see like, okay, I'm doing the same thing as her, but like 10 minutes behind her. And like, it was just fun to kind of, you know, put myself against like, all right, like this is where I'm at. And then some of the things where I was able to, you know, do a little bit better in was also neat, of like, this is it's kind of my thing. So
Yeah. It was there, what was the most difficult thing for you? Because actually some people would say the multi-day kind of multi events all in a day kind of thing can be really difficult for some people, but obviously that's something that you probably excel at. So what was difficult for you? And then what was, well, obviously mountain biking was your favorite, but was there one that you think you took away, oh, that was really my event kind of thing as well?
The Air Force Special Forces physical test was a big challenge.
Yeah.
It wasn't even so much that the challenge itself was challenging, but the
Environment.
yes, was
Yeah.
so cold. So that one was probably one of the more challenging ones. Again, like it was physically challenging, but it was almost more mentally challenging, because even though like that cold is uncomfortable, like your body can handle it, but it was very like, mentally a lot.
Yeah.
The other one that I didn't, just because again, I mean, I don't come from any background, the pacer test where it was like the beat test, the pacer test. I'd never heard of that or seen that before. And that
Oh,
was
really?
very like new.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was very lost.
Yeah. Well, we're in Canada, so Lindsay would have done that probably in high school. They used to do that. They don't do it anymore, but
Yeah.
they used to do it, which was
I
a
think
weird
they
thing.
do it here too. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have
Yeah,
like a
so
very
maybe that's why.
normal,
Yeah. Yeah.
normal upbringing. And then the thing that I would say one of the ones that I enjoyed the most was the wrestling. Wrestling was something that I'd seen in season 1. So when I got invited to this season, like 2 weeks before, that was one thing where I was like, I know nothing about wrestling. So I spent a little bit of time at a jiu-jitsu gym and with a friend that knows wrestling, and kind of like that was the one thing I worked on coming into it. And that was an event that I actually did fairly well in. I ended up in the last round against Corinna. So I thought that one was kind of neat, to be able to like actually have something that I had a little bit more background in than some of the others did.
Yeah.
I mean, the trail run was really fun. I loved that one. And then the other one that I didn't expect to enjoy, but I kind of did, was the very final event with the different, stones.
Yep.
I enjoyed that one. It was like I've done that, something along those lines a little bit. So
yeah,
I thought that one was neat.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, and so, when you, because you started this relatively late, so did you find that difficult starting late, or was it a positive thing? And then maybe did you have to, did you have mentors that helped you at the very start that maybe kind of, because you're having to, no matter what, you're having to learn things that a lot of other people probably have also done for years and years. So how did you catch yourself up so quickly? And was that like, did other people help you? How did that work for you?
Yeah, a little bit of both. When I first came into it, I felt like I was very much at a disadvantage. I was like, all these people have been doing this for years. They all know what they're doing. As I've been doing it a little bit more, I feel sometimes a little bit, and I actually realized this a little bit sooner too. I sometimes feel a little bit of an advantage because so much of what we do is so unpredictable. Like we're not doing time trials, like something that's very, except for HYROX, most of it is very unpredictable. And so I end up rolling very well with that, because for me, everything is unpredictable. Where for people that are able to like, they know what pace they should be running, they know how they should be feeling. And then if they're off, it can throw them for a loop. I've had none of that. So a little bit at first I felt like it was a disadvantage. Now I feel like I'm okay with it. And in some ways it's a little bit of an advantage. Definitely to get caught up this quickly is definitely due to the gym that I started going to, Grit Fitness, and the owner there. I remember, I'd never really run much before. And he was like, okay, well, we need to know how fast you can run a mile. We should, you need to learn about controlling your heart rate and all these different things that were, now I look back and I was like, I just had no idea about anything. But he was the owner there at Grit Fitness. Kenny Stanford was very involved in, it was really neat. He saw some kind of potential in me and really put the time and effort into kind of schooling me up as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Now, because you're doing what you're doing, a lot of things are based on sponsorships and all that fun stuff and everything. Is that do you find you know, is that a difficult part where you have to do the business side a little bit at the same time as the other stuff you do? Like some athletes that are doing it, you know, they absolutely hate having to do all of that part. It takes away from the training. Others are, you know, it's part of the job, and then others actually truly like it. So where do you fall in that? You know, is it difficult or no?
I've always worked full time, so I haven't really worried a whole lot about the sponsorships.
Yeah,
Only more recently, I've kind of had some sponsorship opportunities, and to
yeah,
me, it's been fairly easy because it's not the way I'm trying to make it. Like I can be
yeah,
very selective, and like if I'm not really about it, like no, thank you.
yeah,
And then there've been some brands that I am really like and really use, and so I think I'm in a position where it's been easy for me to like I'm able to just work with people that I want to,
yeah. And it's
and
a little more organic and just
yeah,
yeah,
it's been good.
cool. And then so you know, how do you set goals for yourself? I guess personally, one thing would be because you do so many different types of events and stuff. Like, do you just see what's coming and then do kind of whatever you want, or do you have very specific kind of goals that you're reaching for the next little while? Like, how do you tackle that?
I don't have a lot of goals. I just kind of, want to do it all. I do daily workouts, and depending on what I have coming up next, I'll kind of tweak them somewhat. But I just basically do a daily workout and a daily run, and
Yeah,
I'll tweak it some depending on what's coming up. But I enjoy just being active and like just the daily grind of it. So,
yeah,
um, goals. I mean, I want to do well in HYROX. I really jumped into HYROX at the end of last year and was
yeah,
like, this is really neat. I want to do well in this. So I've got that coming up in a couple weeks. And then after that, for the summer, I'm kind of shifting a little more of my focus to some of the ultra running. I'm doing 400 milers in 4 months. It's kind of, they call it like the grand slam of ultra running.
yeah.
It's some of like the biggest, oldest ones. So over the summer, I'll do a lot more of just that, long
Long
running
run.
time on feet. So,
Yeah. Wow.
um,
And so, like from your end, it's just is it more about the experiences right now then? Like, you know, do you really want to, okay, out of if you're doing a couple of 100 milers, do you really, like, I know you care about your time, but is it about, you know, improving every time, or is it about, you know what, I want to do the four because this is really cool, and you know, why not do it while I can?
yeah, it's definitely the experience. When it comes to ultra, it's definitely the experience. I love it. I love doing it. I want to do 100 milers by the time I die, and I want to do one in each state. So I guess those are kind of my goals with that.
Yeah.
I don't think, I know I'm not like peaking endurance wise for, probably even like another 10 years.
Mhm.
So I don't really put a lot of focus on trying to do well in them. I'm
Yeah.
just there for the experience mostly. And I'm more focused on doing well in some of the shorter stuff and the high rocks. And for me, the hundreds are just like, let me be in the mountains for a couple of days. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I do want to do better at them eventually, but those are kind of like more longer
Yeah.
term goals.
Well, and so, you know, some people, when you ask the question, it's a difficult one, but maybe for you it's a little easier. Is sometimes how do you balance, you know, your own, I mean, you're young, so you probably want to have a life at the same time as, you know, working and doing training and all those things. Do you find, is that a challenge for you, or is it not so much right now?
Not really. Like this is the life that I love. And so this to me, this kind of is my life. And I want it.
Yeah.
Like I've chosen it. This is what I love. So I like working and training and then racing on the weekends. And I feel like that kind of balances it out, having to, you've got real life and then that's my fun. And that's the life that I'm after, that I enjoy. So
Yeah.
it all
Yeah.
kind of works together for me.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a perfect way to do it. If it all kind of fits for you, then why not, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess so. You've talked about a couple of things that are on the radar for the next little bit. Another one is, so if they did another Spartan Games, would you do it again after your experience this time?
Yeah. I probably
Yeah,
would. If they
yeah,
invited me back, I'd go. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
So one of the things that we ask everybody that we go through, Kris, is that we try to pull out a couple of specific things for people listening that they can transfer to their own lives. And I know we touched on it a little bit before, but maybe we'll revisit it a little bit, because I think that the whole idea, that you have to be really good at being able to get through mental blocks yourself, I'm sure, because you do ultras, you do all these things that really push yourself. So if somebody's there and they're looking at, how do I build that resiliency muscle, or how do I know that, whether it's in a race or other things, if I'm hitting these blocks, and really, how do I get myself through them mentally? Do you have a couple of specific things that really kind of work for you to be able, that someone else could kind of do, and if they're in that situation?
Yeah, and I guess I already kind of did touch on that, but I would say, I mean, one of the biggest things is like, you can do so much more than you think you can, or than it even feels like you can. And so realizing that, and then I think and once you can do it, and I think there's some level of like putting pressure on yourself to progress and grow, without like putting pressure on how that happens. And I think I've found that is kind of a lot how I've worked, is pressure. Like, you should always, if something's easy for you, it's time, if everything feels easy, like, challenge yourself, do something more difficult. But when you challenge yourself, you have to allow yourself grace in that challenge, in that this is something new, this is something scary, this is something you've never done before. So it's kind of the whole like pressure, but not expectation. And I think that's the best way to grow. That helps you grow physically if you're not afraid of that challenge, you're not avoiding that challenge. And then it also helps you grow mentally, realizing that like, you can be bad at something, you will be bad at things, and to realize like you have to start from somewhere, and that will change. Like, you will get better at things, but if you never challenge yourself, you'll never get there. So it's kind of that like pressure, but give yourself a lot of grace in the mean, or during that,
Well, yeah, and that's so universal, because that's not just athletics, that's so many other things that, or even if just somebody hasn't been able to bring themselves to go to a gym the first time. I mean, it's the same thing, that you have to know that you're not going to be probably fantastic the first day, but it's that first step is actually the huge part. So, so, people I know are probably already starting to follow you and things like that. But I think especially over the next little while, when there's going to be so many things that you're going to be involved in, what are some of the best ways for someone to follow, what's going on with you, Kris?
Definitely on Instagram. You can find me there on Instagram. My username is just my name, at Kris Rugloski.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm always good at social media, but I try to put some stuff on there, what I'm up to, what I've been doing.
There's some good stuff on there. So yeah, I like that. No matter what, we'll be able to see, because I know with HYROX and some of those things, they're really kind of promoting that stuff now, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we'll make sure that we have it in the show notes, so that people can kind of click through and follow you, because there's some great stuff there, and you are definitely becoming one of those prominent people very quickly in a lot of different areas. So it's great that you've taken the time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
All right. And everybody else, if you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, do that now. We have great people every week, just like Kris. Again, thank you, Kris. And to everybody else, thanks for listening. And we will talk again on Big Idea, Big Moves.